Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It's April 21st, and I'm your host, Tim Clauser. New questions are emerging around Washington's push for an income tax as internal communications reveal how far some lawmakers were willing to go to make it happen. Tonight, we're breaking down two major developments. First, the newly signed income tax targeting high earners, and second, the legal battle that could determine whether income taxes expand even further in the state. Newly obtained documents reveal communications between lawmakers and the state attorney general's office about challenging long-standing legal precedent, specifically a nearly century-old ruling that defines income as property under Washington's Constitution. That matters because if that precedent is overturned, it could open the door to a broader income tax beyond just top earners. We spoke with the Center Square's TJ Martinell and Citizen Action Defense Fund attorney Jackson Maynard about what these documents could mean for the future of income tax policy in Washington. First, here's the Center Square's Carlene Johnson speaking with TJ Martinell about what he uncovered through a records request involving the Washington State Attorney General's office.
TJ, one of the main questions I know during the legislative session from reporters, not just from the Center Square, but other reporters was, you're passing an unconstitutional income tax. What of that? Do you feel okay about doing that? You raise your right hand when you take your oath of office to uphold the Constitution. Can you speak to anything you saw in those documents you obtained about whether, in fact, crafters of the legislation were at all concerned about constitutionality?
I don't think that there was any question about the constitutionality among the lawmakers or AGO staff, because they also provided legal memos that kind of outlined the arguments that they're going to make in front of the state Supreme Court. And in their opinion, they think that Colton and the subsequent, they basically think that the state Supreme Court has been wrong for a century on whether or not income's property. I think the one thing that kind of struck me is there was an email sent. So Senator Peterson, who was a sponsor of the millionaire's tax, sent a draft copy of it to Solicitor General Noah Purcell, interested in his thoughts on it, insofar as its objective is overturning Colton. And Noah Purcell sent a lengthy email giving his thoughts, and it ended with him noting that there was no emergency clause in the bill. And he was, he didn't outright advise it. He just noted, if you pass it and there's no emergency clause, then potentially you can have a referendum where the voters can overturn it during that November election. He does say he thinks that anything dealing with revenue should have a referendum, but he was noting that the state's Secretary of State's office will not do that without an emergency clause. It needs to have one.
Okay.
So,
okay.
well,
So yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, so let's just be clear there. Noah Purcell is giving guidance to Senator Peterson, the sponsor of the bill, basically saying, I'm not suggesting you attach an emergency clause here, but if you did it, it would make it, the Secretary of State probably isn't going to allow referendum to go forward. So hint, hint, wink, nod, whatever, you might want to attach this. Is that what your sense is of what you received?
I think the thing is that they're, as attorneys, they're there to, advise their clients. And we have to keep in mind that Senator Peterson and the legislature is a client of the Attorney General's office. So they're providing legal advice on this matter. And so I just found it interesting that was something that was noted, and it really, it does raise the question of how many other bills that have been passed with emergency clauses that prevent a referendum were added at the suggestion of the Attorney General's office.
And I wonder how many times crafters of bills go to the AG and say, hey, this is what we're going to try to do. Could you give us some advice here? Is that common practice?
I think the thing that's interesting, they did send or did request legal memos to say, hey, what's the legality of a proposed millionaire's tax, and will it stand up to legal scrutiny? But what's interesting in this regard is a lawmaker is asking his attorneys, the Attorney General's office, to help him craft a bill that will overturn a court decisions, which is different from saying, hey, I want to craft this bill, but I want to make sure it's going to, stand up to legal scrutiny. And their basis is effectively this idea that the state Supreme Court will overturn Colton, not whether or not they're not challenging the fact that it doesn't violate Colton. Their argument is that the Colton decision was wrong, and that the other decisions that agreed with it are wrong. And they make their case in these emails and legal memos that I've obtained. And so that's the frame of the discussion. It's not whether this millionaire's tax is legal under state Supreme Court precedent. They're admitting that it's not. What they're hoping is that this will trigger a lawsuit, which it has, that will force the state Supreme Court to address the question. And so they said, don't call it an excise tax. That's going to just cause confusion. They did that with the capital gains tax, where the state Supreme Court was able to avoid dealing with addressing Colton because they just said it's an excise tax, so the Colton decision doesn't apply. So that's where it was specifically crafted so that it couldn't be overturned under any other circumstances. That was the hope.
What's going to be fascinating is to find out what the response is going to be in the next 24, 48 hours, because if you will, characterize, I mean, you've done a gazillion public records requests as an investigative reporter. You get documents back all the time. How would you characterize this batch of documents that you received, maybe versus what you expected to get compared to some other big cases you've worked on?
I didn't expect to receive the amount of records that I got. And I think what we're seeing here, I think the bigger, broader context is that voters have rejected a progressive income tax in our state, because something to keep in mind is a flat rate income tax is legal. A progressive income tax is not if Colton decision is upheld. And so voters have rejected this numerous times. And here you have state lawmakers wanting and working with the Attorney General's office to figure out how to get around the fact that voters have rejected it. If they thought voters would support it, then why not do some sort of initiative or constitutional stuff? Because that's the problem, is they'd have to go through a constitutional amendment to get around this issue. And so this is allowing them, because what will happen is if Colton is overturned, they can pass a progressive income tax at any rate to everyone and anyone by a simple majority vote of the legislature.
So I can't wait to hear what reaction's going to be in the next couple of days to all of this, TJ, and for folks, whether they're supporters or opponents of the income tax, how this is going to play into all that, and the legal case moving forward. Right, we've got the Citizen Action Defense Fund suit, and former AG Rob McKenna and former State Supreme Court Justice Phil Talmadge kind of leading that, championing that. I can imagine that this is going to be playing into the arguments going forward. So good work on you getting it all. I appreciate you coming on today for this episode of Washington in Focus.